Hey guys, welcome back for another Warhammer Imperium painting video. First of all, apologies on the delay on this one. My intentions was to get it out as normal, only I'm changing the paint scheme on my army slightly, and I had to wait for a particular paint to come in, which will feature in this video. Unfortunately it came in late and I couldn't get the model painted in time for the video, and so it's delayed by a week. But I've got the paint, got the model painted, got the video done, and here we are. So today we're painting up the Necron Overlord from issue 8 of the Warhammer Imperium magazine. And as always, I'm starting off with a silver primer that has a wash of non-oil over it all to dull it down slightly. If you're using Games Workshop Lead Belcher, then you can go ahead and use that straight and then maybe panel line some non-oil into the recesses. The reason I do a whole wash is because the silver that I use is quite a bright silver, very shiny, and so I use the non-oil to dull it down slightly and make it a little bit more towards the lead belcher. Anyway, I'm using my usual paint mix here. This is Screaming Bell, 2 parts Screaming Bell with 8 parts Larmian Medium and 2 to 3 drops of water. So I'm just sort of, getting a nice thin glaze that I can sort of apply and then go back over an area, stepping it up slightly, or stepping down and layering over the top to get a brighter or more opaque towards the base of the area. So his thigh, for example, here I'll leave a little bit of the silver at the top, so start about 1/3 of the way down, bring the brush and the paint to the bottom, let it dry, and then go back over, but starting about halfway up and coming down. And this will give a slight fade from the silver metallic into the more copperish metallic. Right, so next up is where my army is going to change ever so slightly. Now, I'm still using Incubi Darkness, except you'll notice from previous videos that I'm not thinning it down to have the metallic show through and give more of a metallic look. What I'm actually doing is building this up with a couple of thin down layers, as usual, as with any colour, but to get it opaque, as though I'm painting it solid Incubi Darkness. And this is because I have a paint that will be going over the top of this that works better over dark colours, and obviously we'll get to that a bit later. I don't want to reveal it just yet. Hopefully you guys will like the result of it. I think it makes the model look a little bit better, but obviously that's my personal taste. But anyway, what I'll now do is go around sections of the model that I want to be in this particular colour. So obviously with the Incubi Darkness, which will be his sort of his back and shoulder pauldrons that he's got going on here. The centerpiece of what I will call his loincloth, the piece between his legs, with the 2 sort of bits either side of it, will be in gold, so they'll be done separately. And also the emblem in the center of his chest, although I do forget it on here, I do go back and paint it in later. Also with his head, all my Necrons are going to be like this, so any that I've done in the past I'm going to change, and any future videos will follow this same painting method. But his face is going to be in this colour as well, and also his headdress. Now he's got sort of a double layered headdress. On the back it becomes one piece, as you can see, so all of that will be the Incubi Darkness. However, on the front he has this sort of tri-star piece in the middle. I do either side of that becomes his skull or his face in this, and I leave that centerpiece plain or silver, which will be painted later on. I also do the handle for his staff, as well as the center 3 stripes on his cloak, which obviously for being able to reach the back here, I'm painting this in a couple of subsections, so I've left the cloak off, and I'm just painting the centerpiece. They've got the sort of the little orb down each of them, and then it changes the pattern slightly on one side of it and then a little bit on the other side. So the center 3 of those will also be done in the Incubi Darkness. And then just to bring the colour through the model a little bit more, he seems to have these extra sort of thigh plates put on that general warriors and some of the other models don't have. So I've decided to do that in this blue as well, or this Incubi Darkness as well. So he's got a couple of sort of thigh plates on there. So obviously it's going to take a couple of layers. I'm looking to get this nice and solid, but I'll get this done and then we'll be back in just a bit. Right, moving on to the gold now. As you can see, I'm doing the 2 pieces either side of his loincloth here in Retributor armour, and also obviously don't forget the back of them. Also the similar pieces on his cloak on the back. He's got, like I say, these gold outer edge pieces, these tassely pieces that are sort of different shape and pattern to the center 3. So they'll be in gold. Also, he's got a couple of bangles on his wrist, or what look like they would be bangles, and because he's royalty, I just assumed to make them sort of gold bracelets. Those will obviously be gold as well. And the center orbs down the 3 cloak pieces on the back of his cloak, they've got like these little orb pieces in each one. I'll do them in gold as well. And this is sort of the tri-star headpiece you can see here that I've left from the previous step. As you can see, I'm doing this gold as well. So I wanted it just to stand out a little bit from the headpiece. I think Games Workshop's painted model or display piece that they use for advertisement, and that has this in white, depending on obviously the faction. I think their Saracen dynasty has this in white, but I decided to go for a bit more of a golden blue look with that copper main body piece for my army. So again, I'll get on with this and we'll catch you guys back in just a flash. Okay, so with the main base colours down, I'm now going in with some non-oil and just darkening up a few of the silver areas, as you can see here, that I felt weren't quite enough, but also applying this over the sorry, I forgot the name, the Incubi Darkness. So I'm applying this as a wash over the Incubi Darkness as well, to add a little bit of shade, but also to get back into those recesses where some of the paint may have got into. With this, I'll also apply a good wash of Rekland fleshshade gold over all of the gold areas. No, not Rekland fleshshade gold. Rekland fleshshade gloss over all of the gold areas. This will just add a little bit of sort of a reddish brown shade to them. You can see here as well what I mean with the gold pieces either side of the Incubi Darkness, on the cloak there, and then down the center area you can see the golden orbs. Once I've got these 2 washes on, I'll give them about 15 to 20 minutes to fully dry. Obviously I'll make sure that any drips that start to run down I'll pull off with a brush. I just want it sort of staining and pulling in some of the recesses, but I don't want it blobbing down at the bottom of the cloak. I'll then balance this up against my my wet palette so that it's sort of upright, and then that way I can catch anything that flows down. Okay, so next up I'm taking some white scar and I'm just going over the blade and any of the orb parts of his body that I want to have a glowy green effect. So that's he's got the orb on the top of his staff here. There's one sort of in the center of the blade on the staff pole either side of it. The blade itself, and also the piece at the bottom that joins onto the rock. The orb that he's holding, the resurrection orb, will also get this. I think he has one in his the centre of his waist there. His eyes I will also do with this, and not worry about getting it on the blue, the Incubi Darkness, but I will do that after I have finished the model, when it comes to applying the Tesseract Glow to get this bright green, because obviously I've got another layer of paint to go there, and I want this white over the top so you get that glow on the outer. Well, I was to do it now, and then obviously I'd be painting over it. It just isn't going to show. Also, he has the very large orb in the centre of his back. Now, I hope you guys did leave the cloak off, because otherwise it's going to be very tricky to get in there. There's obviously the large orb, and then on his actual back piece that is separate from him, there's an orb at the top of his spine as well that I wanted to do the same. So obviously that's going to get a white as well. And then finally, for what I call the power coil at the top of his staff here, I just take some Screaming Bell, not thinned down or anything. This is just, you know, straight from the bottle. And obviously go over those, being sure not to put it in the gaps that have got the gaps in between, because obviously they've got Nuln Oil in there. If you do get it in there, don't worry, you can go in with some thinned down Abaddon black, and just sort of put that in there. If you get any black then on the where the Screaming Skull is, not the Screaming Skull, the Screaming Bell, then you can just touch that up back up with the bell afterwards. Okay, and this is the new paint that I was waiting for and that I've been waiting to show you guys. It is obviously not a Games Workshop product. This is from Green Stuff World. It's one of their colour shift metal paints. I think they also call them chameleon paints, and this is the Psychotic Illusions. Now this is obviously a sort of a two-tone paint that shifts from purple to sort of a greeny blue. Unfortunately the camera doesn't pick it up brilliantly, so you will have to trust me that it is there. I use this by putting it onto my wet palette. I would advise putting it into a little dish or something instead, a lid or anything that will hold more of a liquidy paint. It is a super thin paint. As you can see, it starts running down my wet palette. What I'm doing is using a fairly large brush. This is a size 5, and I'm not fully saturating the brush in. I'm trying to just sort of pick it up on the end of the bristles, and then giving it a nice thin coat over all of the Incubi Darkness. And this is where I said that you need a dark colour under this one. I tested it on some various sort of undertones to see what kind of effect it would have. They recommend black, which does come out very well. However, I found that the Incubi Darkness, because it has a blue tint to it, brings out a little bit more of the blue within the colour. The black shows a little bit more of the purple. And I also tried this over a few other colours, but didn't get any great results, so I won't bother mentioning what those colours were. But I find the Incubi Darkness or black work the best. But yeah, so all I do is go over all of the Incubi Darkness areas with this, give it a nice thin layer. Try not to go back over, but try to make sure that you get a nice even coverage. You don't want to go back over until it's fully dry. Otherwise you'll lift up the pigment and you end up with some sort of weird patchy stuff going on. I didn't obviously have that problem with this. I did a few test bases and stuff to find out how to best use it. But yeah, to me personally, it's a great product for making sort of a shiny metallic sort of space looking metal. Not everybody's cup of tea. Hopefully you guys like it, or some of you guys will enjoy it. If you do, then obviously you can check it out. I think these go for about £4 a bottle, a little bit less, a little bit more depending on where you shop, and then obviously any delivery charges on top of that. But yeah, they're about £4.50 a bottle, just under. And yeah, a couple of thin layers, let them dry between layers, and you get a great result of a colour shift. Like I say, the camera doesn't pick it up brilliantly. It tends to make it look more of a metallic blue. It doesn't really show the purple as great. I am using it on my heavy destroyer that I've got at the minute, so when it comes to that video, then obviously you'll see it on there. But this is what I will be using in future videos, so do obviously follow the channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button, and while you're down there, may as well throw a like on this video as well if you're enjoying it. So yeah, I'll apply this over all of the Incubi Darkness, and then we'll come back towards the final stages. Okay, so moving on to the blade now. I've got 3 colours on the palette that I'm using here that will be used for the blade. That's Abaddon Black, Warpstone Glow, and Moot Green being the brightest. So what I'm doing right now is applying the Warpstone Glow over the whole blade, and you can see it's quite bright here. This is because I've got a white undercoat, which is obviously why I painted it white. Also, I didn't want the metallic showing through. You could do it with a black undercoat and then build your way up to the green with glazes. However, I do prefer to work the other way round. Have the mid-tone down first. So in this case, it's the Warpstone Glow, and then glaze backwards with your dark colour, so that you're building up the darkness, and then you can go in and blend with the mid colour and the black for, you know, that fade area to build your fade up properly. So obviously, first of all, I'll apply this over the whole blade, get it nice and even, a few coats on there. This would also go on the sort of the blade that's at the bottom of the staff there, and also the orb in his hand, as I'm going to apply a little bit of an effect to that, which will show a little bit later in the video. Right, so once the green is down, I'm now using a bit of a mix. I will mix between the black and the Warpstone Glow to try and get a little bit of a darker green, and then I'll carefully add more and more black to this each time to obviously get it darker as I fade back. So I'm not so much using the glazing method that I did for the wet blend method that I did for the Scorpec destroyers in a previous video. If you want to see how I did that method, then I'll put a card up in the corner here, linking back to those, so you can check out how I did those. This one I'm using a slightly different technique, just so obviously I can show you guys different ways of achieving a similar result. So what I'm doing here is getting the mid-tone and then slowly mixing that in with the black and building it up in layers. Obviously leaving the area I want brightest with the mid-green, and then slowly bringing it back into that darker area. I'll then go back in, add a little bit more black, and build it again, starting a little bit further back, and just build my layers up one at a time over the top of those until I've got back to basically a solid black in the darkest areas, and I'll have that mid-tone along the brighter areas. Okay, so once I'm happy with the black to green blend, I'm now taking the Moot Green and carefully edge highlighting the sharp edges of the blade, as well as either side of any grooves that are cut in to the blade. You've got them sort of lines and circles and stuff. I'll also use this slightly thinned down and apply this to some of the slightly more brighter areas that I want as a glaze. So pretty much not touching into the black, but maybe the dark green and then into the brighter green, and I'll blend that up a little bit until it becomes the brightest green just at the edges of that sort of green mid-tone area. Obviously I'll do the same for the bottom of the blade. As you can see here, I've not done that yet, but I'll do the same down there, and then we can come on to working on the resurrection orb. Okay, so for the resurrection orb, I wanted it to look like it had sort of a swirling liquid or something inside, you know, like maybe a swirling gas around a planet kind of thing. You know, if you imagine a gas giant, you get these swirls and lines and stuff going around it. I wanted a similar effect on the resurrection orb. So what I did first was applied the Warpstone Glow, and then I took the Warpstone Glow and a little bit of Incubi Abaddon Black, and got sort of a slightly darker, muddier green, and holding my brush directly above the centre of the orb, I did a swirl, as you can see here, swirling across and down, leaving a little bit of a gap. And what it would do is give this spiral effect going down and round. It's not 100% neat, but it gives me a basis to work from. So hopefully you can see it there. It's looking a little bit like a watermelon or something at the moment. We've got the sort of darker green and mid-green lines, and now what I'm doing is going in and painting in some of the brighter lines and darker lines in between, again to get a bit more of a swirly look to it. And then once I've got my dark swirls in there, I'll go back in with the moot green, and you can see I'm just doing a sort of a stippling pattern in some of the sort of brighter areas, just to add a little bit more, again, this sort of swirling effect. I'll then go back over this with a white, barely any white on the brush, and basically just dot in very roughly a swirl of lines just sort of around the center that comes up to the top a little bit, just a swirl of dots, sorry, going around in a line that I can then put some Warpstone Glow over, and they'll give the sort of the final glowing effect of the orb. And then while I have the Tesseract Glow, I'll apply that, like I say, over the orb to get the those bright points. I'll then go over all of the remaining orbs that I left or painted white and apply this, and obviously this just gives a nice, quick and easy orb glow effect. You can see I just glaze it over the scythe there, just to sort of brighten up some of those bright areas, and then just sort of smudge it off a little bit if it went on a little bit too much. And then on the back orb there, don't have to be super neat, it's going to be mostly hidden anyway. Obviously if you want to, you know, be picky about it, then be picky about it. But me personally, knowing it's hidden, or the majority of it is hidden, I was happy to just get it on there and let it dry. And then just to finish the model off, I'll go around with Abaddon Black and painting the pipes under his between his rib cage and the one that goes from the power coil to the blade of the scythe on the back there. And then I'll mix a little bit of white into that and just use that to give a grey effect. I'll then assemble the model, base him up, and we'll come back in just a bit to have a look at the finished model. And there he is, one completed Necron Overlord in my new paint colour scheme. So as always guys, if you've enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, and if you have any feedback you would like to leave, the comments are the place to do it. If you are not yet subscribed and you would like to subscribe to the channel, then hit that subscribe button, and if you are newly subscribed to the channel, then a huge warm welcome to the inner circle to you. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video guys. I hope that some of the techniques that I've done in this help you with your models. As always, if there's anything you would like me to go into more detail with a specific video, hit those comments and let me know, and I will try to do what I can for you. But until next time guys, take it easy and keep painting those minis.